All right. We're back. Oh. I'm sure you guys can hear that, so I'm going to mute myself. Amazing. Okay. Did that work? Why can I hear myself? Interesting. Hold on one sec here. Whatever. Are we just going to send it? We might just send it. All right. Love it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MoneyShift podcast. I am Thanasi, and today we got some interesting stuff. There's a lot of car news, a lot of kind of seemingly random things that are paired together. If you guys are listening to the podcast right now, let me know how the audio is coming out. For whatever reason, I can hear an echo from my monitor. I can try and sort of turn that down here if you guys can hear it as well. Okay, perfect. All right, that's better. All right, so shall we get into this week's news? So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a preview, a little TLDR of what we got going on. So we got some Russian car news. We got modified car news. OEMs are getting into the modified scene. We got some failures, and we got some modified BMWs, because who doesn't need more power when it comes to BMWs? Am I right? Or just in general? I think the entire car market is just increasing in power. And if you guys have been around for the stream for a couple of weeks, you'll know that I'm of the belief that cars are just getting fucking way too fast. But hey, that's a conversation for a different day. Let's hit the record button on the podcast and let's get this shit going. As a reminder for you guys that are on the stream, whether it's for the very first time or if you're a returner, feel free to comment, interject, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, tell me you agree with me, tell me you love me, whatever it is. I want you to be a part of today's podcast. All right. So we're going to hit the record button and we are going to get underway. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MoneyShift podcast. I am Thanasi, and today we have a good amount of car news, actually, surprisingly good amount, because again, whenever we're not in this like car show season, right, where every week something is happening, whether it's, the Geneva Car Show, the Detroit Auto Show, the LA Auto Show, whatever it is, those are my favorite weeks. I actually have a natural high of adrenaline through them because they're just so much fun. There's so much going on. But when those weeks don't happen, usually automakers tend to really, stale is the right word when it comes to automotive news. It just tends to stagnate out a little bit. But this week is not actually like that. There was a bunch of different things that happened, which was actually really, really fun. And I'm excited to walk you guys through them. So first, let's start out by talking about SSC. For those of you that remember this, what you're looking at right now, for those of you that are watching the live stream, is the SSC Tatra. Okay, this is a car designed by Shelby Supercars. It's been in the design phase for the better part of 5+ years. Still looks amazing, has a shit ton of power, but their ultimate goal was over 300 miles an hour, right? So that was their thing. They wanted to release this car and they wanted to set everyone's mind on fire by just being the number one thing, the fastest thing, just the king shit, right? So they did a run. They claimed they got over 300 miles an hour. They just eclipsed the Bugatti Chiron 300 mile an hour number. But then some YouTubers came in. They said, hey SSC, we got a problem with you because your run is bullshit. They were actually able to prove, through how fast the top speed of the helicopter that was taking the video and then comparing it to the Koenigsegg video and blah, 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 that the actual mile per hour was probably not the speed that Shelby was talking about. So, the founder of Shelby, Jared Shelby, came out and he said, hey, we're confident in the car. I hear what you're saying. I think we can do it again, and I'm not worried about it. And so they were going to do it again, and they invited the YouTubers that gave them shit, which was Shmee, Robert Mitchell, etc., a bunch of guys. And months have gone by since their first run, and they decided to run again. So Robert Mitchell was the only YouTuber that was able to go, and he actually released a video about this. I think it's like something like 10 minutes, maybe longer. Maybe it's one of those like 30-minute guys where he's just fucking sitting in his garage looking at a camera being like, yeah, so I did this thing, and there's like no video footage. It's just him talking. But anyway, so it took place in Florida, and there was a new driver. So Dr. Larry Kaplan, who's actually the owner of the SSC Tuatara being used for these tests, was going to be behind the wheel. So that's kind of interesting because while I'm all for the owner of the vehicle, taking this thing to the limit and really setting the record, it seems like something where you would need to really be brought up to speed, right? Like if you've never gone 300 miles an hour before, just showing up and doing it doesn't really sound like it's something that's realistic. So problem one. Problem two is they never give any explanation as to why Oliver Webb, who was the driver that did it at the last time, wasn't able to do it. So we're just, things are building here. Three, the doctor needed to get up to speed, right? They're not just going to put him in the car and be like, hey, go for 300. Good luck. Have fun. We'll see you on the other side. No, that's not actually what happened. They had to do multiple runs, right? And they progressively built the boost. They progressively let him go faster. And because of that, they ran into some serious heat issues. This car heat soaked so much that it actually threw 2 spark plugs, and because of that, their day was done, right? So the fastest they got was 251 miles an hour, which is incredibly impressive, right? Anything over 200 is really, really fast. 250 is incredibly fast, but it's a far cry from the 300 miles an hour that we were promised we would get with the rerun. But I kind of hate it because they kind of have an excuse, right? They're like, we were given Oliver, we were given the Dr. Larry, the owner of the car. We wanted him behind the wheel, and because of that, we had to do more runs than we normally would have done, and because of that, the car heat soaked, and because of excuse. Jared said they're going to do another run. It's going to be after Christmas. Hopefully there's going to be no heat soak issues. Hopefully the doctor or Oliver Webb or whoever the fuck is behind the wheel knows what the hell they're doing so we can get an actual run with an actual time and an actual speed. Instead of this like hearsay bullshit, which allows them to really just kind of sort of hide. They can hide behind the excuse that someone else was driving. It wasn't Dr. Larry Kaplan. It wasn't Oliver Webb. It was the owner. And because of that, that's our excuse as to why we didn't hit 300. I hate that. I hate it a lot. It's very frustrating to sort of see that be a thing that they give. They have that in their back pocket. They have that excuse. So a little frustrating. But something that this does do is make the 300 mile an hour run that Bugatti was able to do with the Chiron really impressive, right? Because they've produced a vehicle that has all the intangibles to be able to hit this speed and to be able to do it with ease, right? So for Bugatti to just be like, yo, here's our Chiron 300, and we did 300, and look at everything we have that helped us do 300. They showed you the video, they showed you the car doing it, all that shit. So it makes that run that much more impressive that this company is having such a hard time being able to get a wrangle on their car in order to do this. Nico says, it's hard to think that they would put their name on the line for that. They had skin on the top speed game for a while. Totally right. SSC with the Ultimate Aero used to have the top speed record, right? And everyone thought that, this was going to be their coming back. The Tuatara was just going to take the crown instantly and things were going to be okay. But things have actually proven to be a little bit tougher than SSC thought. And I think that's interesting. And again, it gives a lot of credence to Bugatti and their ability to do that, right? Bugatti's ability to just crank out a run, no problem. Maybe they had some issues, but at least they waited before they said anything, whereas SSC is like, nope, bullshit. Our car's going to do a bajillion miles an hour. We're super excited for it, and you should be too. So moving on to the next subject, we're going to talk Jeeps for a little bit. And I'm actually kind of really excited for this. Excited and different. I don't know. I'm curious if there are any Jeep people in the chat, what they think of this news. So the reason why I'm showing a bunch of factory modified Wranglers on the screen is because Jeep just acquired a facility in Toledo, Ohio. Now they purchased it for $1. We'll get to that in a minute. but they're building a 250,000 square foot facility where Jeep is planning to produce modified versions of their Wrangler. So they want to produce and sell not just Wranglers, but modified versions of their Jeeps to the public right from the jump. Nico says quickly, do you think 300 or 350 or somewhere before 400 will be the cap where the manufacturers are just like, okay, this is fast enough and challenging enough? That's a good question. I bet you there is no cap, right? Because there's always going to be that one person at that one company that just wants to keep getting faster and faster and faster. We thought 200 was that mark, right? When McLaren was able to do that back in the late 90s, we were like, yes, this is it. We're done. 200 has been hit. Cars don't need to get any faster. Well, we hit 250, and then Bugatti hits 300, right? So that number is just going to keep going up, and it's crazy to think, but yeah, we're just going to keep getting faster. Anyway, so back to the Jeep. So as I said before, Jeep is planning to build a 250,000 square foot facility, and they're planning to produce modified vehicles. Quote, bigger tires, bigger roll bars, different lights, customized running boards, logos, customized paint jobs, whatever. That's pretty rad. I don't know. I've never heard of any manufacturer doing this where they're like selling in the U.S., where they're selling modified cars to you directly. Okay, so they're saying you can, hey, Thanasi, like, I want a Wrangler, I want it lifted, I want some wheels on it, and I want it to be gray, and I want it to have a big-ass MoneyShift logo on the side. And Jeep is like, bet, we got you, no problem. When can you pick it up? I think that's pretty cool. I mean, what does this do to the aftermarket? I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's going to be a bunch of people that just still have their brands, right? If you trust a certain suspension manufacturer and that's not the one that Jeep provides, you're still going to do that over trusting Jeep to modify your car in that regard. But this is just a good way for Jeep to just get some incremental sales because, there's so many fucking modified Wranglers and Gladiators in the world. Why not get into that market yourself? Nico says, seems like a great way to sap from the aftermarket. You're probably right. There's definitely some aftermarkets that are probably shaking in their shoes over this news. So more on the factory quickly before we get to the next subject. So Toledo officials spent about $3.7 million buying the facility. So this facility used to house Textile Leather and MedCorp, which is an ambulance company. Both of those companies shuttered in 2009 and 2013. So the site that Jeep is acquiring has been dormant for the better part of 7 years, right? So Toledo officials purchased the property for almost $4 million, and they cleaned it up, and they sold it to Jeep for $1. Okay. The reason why they sold it to Jeep for $1 was because they hoped that not only would this entice Jeep to produce this facility that would generate a bunch of aftermarket Jeeps. Is it really aftermarket if they're producing them? Anyway, you get the idea. But they also want them to, they just want them to keep it in Toledo, right? They also put in a buyback clause that says, hey, if you don't develop or build on this property within a certain period of time, you got to sell it back to us, and you're selling it back to us for the same dollar that we sold it to you for. So Toledo isn't completely fucked here in the sense that, they paid $4 million nearly for a site that is getting bought for $1, and then Jeep can just be like, hey, yo, later, and just sell it to someone else. But, hey, $1, you know what I mean? Not bad. Not too bad. And while this still does need to be approved by the Toledo City Council, it is assumed that it's more a formality than an actual challenge to get this across. So for those of you in the chat, those of you listening to the podcast, what do you think about an OEM getting into the modified game like Jeep is? Jeep plans to sell Wranglers and Gladiators, which, by the way, are also made in Toledo. Okay? They plan to sell modified versions of those to the public. I'm pretty excited. I mean, this isn't like, maybe it is just for Jeeps, but, you can purchase Mugen and Spoon vehicles in Japan, right? You can buy the Mugen Civic of the minute or the Mugen today or whatever, right? Here, maybe you're buying the Mopar Jeep, right from the factory with everything you want. I don't know. Yeah, Corona is giving major kickbacks to that factory. That is 100%. I mean, they were able to buy a facility that's a $23 million facility, apparently, is what they're going to be building. But they were able to buy that land for $1, right? And that's just because of the taxes that they're hopefully going to bring and the jobs and things like that, right? So anyway, moving on to the next subject, BMW is producing cars with more fucking power. Ugh! More power. Before we get to that, Nico says it's a really easy car to modify, and I'm honestly surprised that they didn't offer Jeep-branded aftermarket parts or whatever earlier. Such an easy way to make money and allow people to spec crazy expensive Jeeps. So, interesting point before we dive into the M5 CS. They did offer a host of aftermarket parts through Mopar. The difference between that and what they're doing now is now you're supposedly going to have the ability to, like, legit customize your shit. This isn't like you're buying a Jeep Wrangler and then tossing a Mopar aftermarket, bumper on it or some shit. Like, nope. You're able to get a fucking lift kit, tires, wheels, lights, paint jobs, all that shit. So it's kind of like the next level here. This is like West Coast Customs, but Jeep, you know what I mean? But anyway, moving on to BMW. So what you're looking at right now, for those of you that are watching the stream, are teaser images of the newest BMW to join the fleet. This is the M5 CS. And for those of you that are in tune with BMW, you know that CS generally means more power and lighter weight. And you know what? It's the same thing here. Okay? Just a reminder of what the BMW M5 competition is stock. It is a 616 horsepower, 553 pound-feet of torque, twin-turbo V8 all-wheel drive sedan that can do 0 to 60, again, stock already, in 3.1 seconds, okay? BMW already sells an M5 that does 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. But BMW said, no, we got to add more power. We got to take out weight. This thing's got to go even faster for whatever fucking reason, okay? So BMW plans to add 10 more horsepower to the M5 CS to give it a whopping 626 horsepower, but they also plan to take out weight, 154 pounds to be exact, which would bring the overall weight of the BMW M5 CS to, anybody? 4,216 pounds. So just a little more than a school bus, which is fine. And for those of you that are wondering price, because, someone's got to buy these things. You know what I mean? Someone has to take the Amex out of their wallet, put it down on the dealer table and say, I want that BMW. How much is it going to cost them? Well, we have no idea of price, but what I can tell you, okay, is that the regular, if 616 horsepower, 553 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds is regular, but the regular M5 competition starts at $110,000. So this M5 CS is probably going to be a good chunk over that. I would not be surprised if this thing started at $150,000. Okay, for an M5, we're talking about a 5 Series here that is going to cost probably close to $200,000 with options. A 5 Series. What is BMW okay? Like, I know, don't get me wrong, this thing's probably going to be batshit crazy. It's going to be a gas-powered sedan that's going to be able to do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, right? That's mental. There's no doubt about it. But it's a 5 Series at its core that is going to end up costing you likely between $150,000 and $200,000. Yikes. That's a lot of dough. That is a lot of money to be pouring in to what is ultimately a 5 Series. And don't get me wrong, okay? You're going to have these bronze accents. You're going to have these yellow DRLs that you see to my left, okay? You're going to have all these things that let people know that you're the superior 5 Series owner. You are what everyone wants to be. But at the end of the day, sir, you just spent over $150,000 on a car that is a 5 Series. Are you okay with that? Because I'm not. There's a lot of good machines you can get with 150K. There's even more amount of machines that you can get for 200K. There's actually even more machines that you can get for sub 100K that are just as good as this fucking car. Okay, they might not be as fast, right? You might not be doing 0 to 60 sub 3 seconds in a sedan, but they're just as good. I can assure you that. Okay. I got to move on before I blow a fucking gasket over an M5 really quick. Moving on to something that I find absolutely hilarious. Nissan says, spoiler alert, that maybe because our cars are too old, that's why we don't get a lot of sales. So for those of you watching the live stream right now, which, by the way, we are on Facebook at MoneyShift. We are also on YouTube at MoneyShift. And now we're even on Twitch. So you can find us on Twitch at MoneyShift_. Literally wherever you guys want to watch stream, that's where I am. Because it's imperative that you get the automotive news that you need weekly to just be up to date and in the know, okay? And I'm here to give it to you on whatever platform you want. Brian says they have a point. You're exactly right. So let's talk about exactly what they said. So in Europe alone, just in Europe, from 2017 to 2019, Nissan's yearly sales dropped 200,000, okay? That's big. And Ashwani Gupta wants to tell us why. So he's the COO of Nissan, and he says, quote, "We went too fast to expand in the world. They anticipated global markets would grow and that our sales would be excellent. Both those things didn't happen." So a lot to unpack just there, okay? One, they expected their sales to be excellent, which seems like a very weird thing to expect as a company that is expanding as quickly as Nissan chose to do, right? To just assume that your sales are going to be top tier seems like bad business practice. Okay, that's one. Two, they were anticipating that global auto markets would grow, okay? Which is a fair assumption, and I would say is a more fair assumption than the fact that their sales would be excellent. But anyway, let's keep this ship moving. So they also say, Ashwani says, when rubber touches the ground and you smell the smoke, whatever the fuck that means. As a result, he says, we were landed with aged vehicles, a huge lineup which we could not maintain, and it's all based on investment. If we don't have the revenue, you can't have the new cars. So pretty much what he's saying is they expanded, okay, to all these countries. They brought Datsun to Russia. They brought massive lineups of just Europe-specific vehicles. They had different cars in the U.S., right? Like, there was a pretty big lineup here, from the Sentra to the Altima to the Rogue to the whatever. Like, Nissan's selling a lot of cars. And actually, to my left here, you're right. These are all 2020 model year Nissans, okay? So I'm showing cars like the GTR, cars like the Frontier, cars like the Rogue Sport, the 370Z. These are all cars that have been around for 5+ years, some even over 10, right? So Nissan definitely does have aged cars, but effectively what they're saying is, hey, you know, we sort of thought our sales would be pretty good. And we thought our performance would be even better. And because of that, we rolled out this really big lineup. And thanks to the revenue, the crazy revenue that we're going to achieve and all the money that we're going to make, we'll just be able to keep giving you new cars. But because they didn't get either, we're looking at a 2020 GTR that is largely the same as a car from 2008. We're looking at a 2020 Nissan Frontier that is largely the same as a machine from, you know, again, 2014, 2013, whenever the hell the Nissan Frontier came out. Actually, older than that. I think it's like 2007. Okay. We're looking at a Nissan Maxima that has been around for almost 10 years. We're looking at a Rogue Sport that has been around for over 5 years, and all because they expanded too quickly and thought that they were going to do even better. Nico says, too fast. They are slowing down. At least make the facelifted ones look different. Brian says, they even put a Cummins in the Nissan truck. Who fails doing that? Nissan, that's who. You're totally right. Oh my goodness. Remember when that Titan came out and we were like, whoa, this is the first time in a passenger pickup truck that you'll be able to get a Cummins diesel engine in something that isn't a Dodge. And let's be honest, the best feature in the Dodge is the Cummins engine. So you'll finally be able to enjoy the Cummins in something else that isn't a Dodge. You'll be able to do it in a Nissan. The Titan, which was largely a good-looking pickup truck, and it failed. Why? Because it was miserably unreliable. And it was a tweener truck, which just don't do well. And Brian says, for some reason, they're all yellow. You're right. A lot of those Pro 4X trucks are around. A lot of them. So what is Nissan going to be doing? Okay, how is Ashwani planning to right this ship? Again, he is the COO of Nissan, okay? Nissan instead is going to work more closely with Renault while also focusing its energy on its most important markets, which means the U.S., China, and Japan. Okay, that's good news, right? They say, quote, in the U.S., our market share is more than 7%, and in Japan and China, it's more than 10%. Profit? Yes. In China and Japan, and the U.S., they think they have potential. So effectively what they're saying is right now, they make money. In China and Japan, they have a good enough market share. They're selling vehicles at a good enough clip to turn a good profit. But in the U.S., they really have to buckle down and right the ship. And they think they can do that. And working more closely with Renault is probably the way to do it. I think you guys can scroll back almost a year now. But on this very podcast, on the MoneyShift podcast, we talked about how Nissan could leverage Renault's existing lineup in order to not only give their lineup a refresh, but bring back some authenticity to the Nissan name, right? Sell an Altima that's actually good. Sell a Maxima that's a premium sedan that can compete with the likes of Acura and everybody else. Sell, a good SUV. Sell good EVs. They have that resource in Renault. They can tap into that, and it seems like they will, which is a really good sign because a lot of Renault's cars, now we can argue reliability and things like that, but a lot of their machines are solid. They look good. They drive good. They have great interiors. And above all else, they look different enough. And they are different enough to give Nissan new vehicles on the cheap, right? Even if they recycled the Megane that is brand new and called it the Sentra here in the U.S., that's a new car to us. It's got new tech. It's got new looks. It's a new machine, right? They could leverage the Laguna, other Renaults, right? Even if they were just one-to-one, which I hope they aren't, I hope they're able to tap into them for more than just, a rebodied, badge-engineered Renault as a Nissan. But even if they did that, okay, that's a new car. And that's not something we've seen a lot from Nissan historically. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful that they have the right leadership now that can focus the brand. They've already killed off Datsun in Russia. They've already killed off a lot of their cars that they're making in Europe. They're just really honing in and focusing their efforts in order to turn this brand around. I'm incredibly hopeful also. The 400Z is seemingly being placed in all the right places, and they're talking to all the right people about the car. So hopeful that they can right this ship. We need Nissan. When Nissan's good, the whole car market's good, right? The heyday in the late 90s, early 2000s of Nissan, where they're producing, good Sentras, good Maximas, good Altimas, good SUVs. Pathfinder, when the Pathfinder was body on frame, right? Those are the things that made Nissan great, not the 2020 370Z, not the 2020 Rogue Sport, right? So hopefully they can right the ship. I'm excited for it. Let's see what they can do. Anyway, Two more things coming at you guys today. The first one we're going to talk about is a bit of Russian news, okay? UAZ. I'm going to call them UAZ, okay? Which makes it easy. So longtime Russian company, they're going to be working with Premac to bring to us two vehicles to the USA. So these two vehicles, okay, they're Russian mainstays. These things are literally everywhere in Russia, but now we'll get the opportunity to own these in the United States. So let's talk about them first. Both the cars are exactly the same, except one of them is an SUV and one of them is a pickup. So I'm going to refer to the SUV because that is the one that is 100% approved for U.S. sales, but the pickup is, shortly behind it. So the SUV is called the Taos. It has 8.26 inches of ground clearance, which for a measuring stick, the 4Runner, okay, has 9.6 inches of ground clearance. So about, an inch and a half more than the Taos. But where the Taos wins is approach angle. This thing has 35 degrees of approach angle, which is more than the Land Cruiser's 15 and more than the 4Runner's 33. It also has the ability to drive through 20 inches of water without modification, which is just a hilarious stat. Premac says this is a stout, old-school family hauler, and it is, in fact, stout. It is used by the military in Russia. They're literally everywhere. So what is going to be powering this thing? It will have a 150 horsepower. Yes, you heard that correctly. This will have 150 horsepower out of a 2.7-liter four-cylinder engine. It will be four-wheel drive. It will have a GM six-speed automatic transmission with a two-speed transfer case, or you can get it with a manual transmission. Final assembly of the vehicle does happen in the U.S., in Los Angeles, but it is leveraging largely imported parts, right? This thing is, above all else, a Russian machine. What's up, Kurt? Thanks for the like on the stream. Thanks for the share, bro. I appreciate you. I hope you are well. Nico asks, he says, will they have dealers or will they be online? Now, that's a good question. Premac is saying they will actually, in fact, have dealers. So this won't just be an online deal. They're offering the ability for franchises to get in this. So if you today wanted to start a Premac dealer, they got you. Like, you can do that, no problem. They're offering warranty as well. So there is a 5-year, $60K warranty, bumper to bumper, and a 10-year, $120,000 warranty, $120,000, Jesus, 120,000 mile warranty on the powertrain. So they're trying to give you some peace of mind here by saying, if you take the time to purchase one of our products, we got your back. You got a warranty for 5 years, bumper to bumper, and you got a warranty for 10 years on the powertrain to the tune of over 100,000 miles there. Brian likes the stream. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that, dude. Kurt, my guy, love you. Podcast. Thanks, dude. Love you too. Hope all is well. Brian says, how many models will they release? So you're looking at both of them right now. So if you're watching the stream, they're going to be releasing two models. So the SUV is called the Premac Taos, which is a rebadged UAZ Patriot. And then the pickup is going to be called the Premac Brio, which is also a rebadged UAZ. So it's a very stout, likely bulletproof, painfully slow machine, and I know what you're thinking. What's the price? How much is it going to take for me to get behind the wheel of a legendary Russian SUV? Anybody got a guess? Anybody? 26 grand. Okay. That SUV that you're looking at right there, the Premac Taos, is $26,000. And the pickup, okay, the pickup is $27,000. And one of the things that I quickly want to look up here is, for those of you that are wondering, how does that compare to other vehicles in the segment, okay? The Wrangler has a base price of $28,000. The Bronco coming out has a base price of $28,000. The 4Runner is the one that I don't know quickly. Let me look that one up. 4Runner MSRP. The 4Runner has an MSRP of $36,000. So that really is the key, right? This thing cannot position itself as a Wrangler Bronco competitor, even though it has the same off-road chops as those cars, maybe even better. This is a body-on-frame SUV after all, right? So they're just incredibly capable from the factory, right? But where it has to position itself is, you know, do you want all the off-roadness and all the reliability of a 4Runner? But do you want it for $10,000 less? Say no more, fam. Bremac is here. We got your back. Hop into this Russian SUV or pickup and send it, okay? Brian says, that looks like an Isuzu Trooper with a facelift. How do you open a dealership for two models? Good question. Ask Alfa Romeo, right? They had their wide dealership network at first with just the Giulia and the Stelvio. I don't count the 4C because they sell like 3 of them every year. So there are other companies that have done it. Is this one going to be successful? I doubt it. Kurt says, this looks like my kind of car. It might be, bro. This is bulletproof. This is probably just a monster year-round. But if you got to not like any sort of features, because this thing is probably going to be incredibly bare bones, okay? I hope that they can sell these things. I hope to keep them around. I don't know. It's nice to sort of just have something that in 10 years is going to be $3 that you can just buy and run into the ground, right? I'm all for a vehicle that in 5 to 10 years makes for an excellent used buy. And I'm sure this thing, okay, would be an excellent used buy as a winter beater, 100%. So I hope at least 100 people buy these things so that they exist on the used car market, because I'd consider one for like $3,000, no doubt. 26, I don't know. But 3,000, yeah, I'm in there for sure. As long as it has heated seats, got a bad back. Probably does, I'm sure. The one thing Russians know is how to deal with the cold, right? So here we go. What up, Eddie? How we doing? Thanks for tuning in. The last thing that I want to talk about today is importing machines, okay? As you guys know, in the United States, we have a 25-year import rule, which means that you have to wait 25 years to the month to import a car, meaning if something comes out today in December, on December 29 or December 30, if you're listening to this on the podcast, 2020, you have to wait till the month of December in 2025 in order to import it into the U.S. I'm looking at you, Toyota Yaris GR. I want you, and I'll see you in 25 years. But anyway, as we come around to the new year, that means 1996 is the year that is legal for import. And that means that there is a host of cars that fit the bill as interesting machines in 1996. And I want to talk about them with you all today. I made a post on the MoneyShift Facebook page, but I think just being able to hash out what you're looking at right now is probably a little bit more interesting, okay? So let's start with this guy, okay? So the Lancer Evolution 4 will now be available for importation come the new year. So the Lancer Evo 4 is the first complete change for the Lancer product since its spawn, okay? So the Lancer Evo 1, 2, and 3 are largely revisions on the 1, whereas the 4 is the first new model, okay? The car was heavily improved. They rotated the engine and transaxle to balance the weight. They increased the power. Oh, and if you get the RS version, it weighs 2,700 pounds, which is incredibly light for an all-wheel drive turbo sedan, right? Brian says, Kurt, you can import a 25-year-old car from Mother Russia, as you can. You definitely can. The next vehicle on our list is the Prado. So the first year of the Toyota Prado is 1996. And for those of you that aren't aware, the Prado is effectively what evolves into the Lexus GX line of vehicle that we see here in the States. In 1996, you were able to get this guy, which is either a 4-door Prado, or you can actually get a 2-door, and I think it looks really, really good as a 2-door model. These things are bulletproof, incredibly off-road ready, and you want to talk about something that you'll likely be able to get for less than that Bremac we talked about earlier, but is probably just as capable. Here it is, okay? JZX90 Prados. You're in there. Next, Nissan Stagias are legal as of 1996, which is the new year. And for those of you that don't know, this is effectively, I don't know if this is the right word, but this is, I'm sorry, guys, I'm switching the slideshow here. But This is like the Skyline sedan. Wagon. It shares a lot of mechanical parts with the Skyline, right? Specifically the R33 and the R34. So the first generation of the Stagia, however you want to call it, I'm sorry, I don't know the proper pronunciation, but it started in 1996. That is the WC34 chassis code. Started from 96, went to 98. You could get this car in a bunch of different engine configurations. You can get it with the RB20. You can get it with an RB25, naturally aspirated. You can get it with an RB25 turbo, the DET, or you can also get this with an RB26 DETT in the 260 RS model, right? So this is a really exciting wagon. It's effectively a Skyline wagon. You can get it in an all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, which is awesome. It has the Laurel front suspension and the R34 Skyline. Wait, hold on one second. Okay, got it. My bad. So if you get the rear-wheel drive version, it has Laurel type suspension. If you get the all-wheel drive version, it uses rear-wheel drive Skyline front multi-link suspension, which is pretty cool. These things are probably really fun to drive. Love speculating about cars. I would love to own one of these. Curious about pricing on them, but just happy to see more of them in the U.S. Moving on. We can finally get some TVRs in the U.S. Speaking of, this is the TVR Sabera. Started in 1996. This probably is something you shouldn't buy. The reason why I say you shouldn't buy this is because this is the era. All of them are like this, but TVRs are remarkably unreliable. Like, remarkably. Okay. A lot of people say, if I can get over 100 miles between trips to the between trips to the shop, it's been a good year for owning a TVR. But would you just look at this thing? It looks amazing. Galen says the Pajero Evo will forever be the desired SUV of yesteryear. Yeah, they're tremendous. Really good looking cars. There's a couple in mass. If anyone wants to give the keys over to MoneyShift to get a review on that thing, let me know. You know where to find me. Nico says, great looking wagon. I wouldn't even swap the front fascia. Yeah, Nico brings up a good point. A lot of people take the R34 front end and slap it right on the Stagia. I think that looks great. I also think the regular front end looks incredible as well. So, yeah, Kurt says we need a guest appearance from Nico. Guy's a stud. Totally agree. We'll definitely get him on here for sure. So back to the TVR Sabera. You can get this thing with a couple of engines. In 1996, you're able to get it with a 4-liter, which they called the Speed 6 i6, which was a dumpster fire. You could also get it with a 4.2-liter Speed 8 V8. That then in the later years went up to a 4.5 and then even later went up to a 4.7. So they got even crazier as the time went on. They made anywhere from, 300-ish horsepower to well over 500, depending on which one you got. So they're batshit crazy cars. They look incredible. But they're notoriously unreliable, so this is probably one that you should stay away from, but I'd be remiss if I didn't include the fact that you can now bring TVRs to the States, and if you can get one cheap enough, swap the motor immediately to something of the LS variety, and now we're talking, right? Moving on to the Tatra 700. I know what you guys are thinking. What the hell am I looking at? And why is more than 2 Russian cars being noticed on the MoneyShift podcast? Well, you are looking at, for those of you that are watching us on the stream, you are looking at the Tatra 700. Never heard of it? That's okay. That's what I'm here for. This thing has a 3.5-liter air-cooled V8. And I know that hood is massive, so what you're thinking is it's probably front engine, it's probably rear-wheel drive. Maybe if it's even quirky, it's front engine, front-wheel drive with a big V8. No, this 3.5-liter air-cooled V8 is actually in the rear. This thing is a Porsche 911 sedan, if you will, that doesn't drive anything like a Porsche, and the only thing they share is the fact that they have air-cooled engines, and they're located in the rear. Did I mention the engine's in the rear and it's a V8? Who cares that the horsepower is really low? Who cares that this thing does 0 to 60 in probably like 10 seconds in 1996? But it's freaking cool, and I'm sure someone's going to be crazy enough to import one, and I'm going to be really excited to see it. The Tatra 700 was the last vehicle from Tatra, and you're looking at the vehicle that Road and Track actually drove. Yeah, Nico says it's the Euro Corsair. Brian, what? Yeah, no, this thing is really, really cool. For sure. It's definitely an interesting machine. I think at most they had like 200 horsepower. This thing definitely deserves a swap. Brian, you're 100% right. LS swap this would be hilarious. Although the fact that it has an air-cooled V8 engine is pretty funny. In its last form, which is what you're looking at here, admittedly, you're not looking at the 1996 model. You're looking at the later year, but they look pretty similar. In its later iterations, it had a 4.3 liter air-cooled V8 with dual overhead cams that could go a little faster. We're talking like, get this, 230 horsepower, 360 pound-feet of torque. This thing was just built to cruise on the highway at high speeds. Kurt says this car looks like a GTA vehicle. You're very right. Galen says this is a 25-year rule apply to all foreign manufacturers regarding imports to the U.S. I only ever hear about it from Japan. Yes, this does in fact apply to everything. So whether you want a British Ford, a Peugeot, a Renault, a Honda, a Acura, whatever, not Acura, of course, I named the one manufacturer that isn't that you wouldn't need to do this for, but it doesn't matter what the brand is. It has to be 25 years old in order to be legal. There's different people and companies that have found ways around it. I've seen like Honda S660s already imported to the U.S., and that's literally a new car. But if you're following the FDA or whatever the fuck, the NHTSA, by the letter of the law, and you're adhering to that 25-year rule, then it does apply to everybody, not just JDM cars. I think the reason why you hear about it most with Japanese vehicles is just because of the intrigue for cars like the Skyline, like the Integra, like the Civic, like the Evo, like, you know what I mean? You could just keep going on and on with the amount of Japanese cars that we just did not get for the early to late 90s. And now there's the generation of people like myself that are, mid to high 20s, maybe 30s, that can afford these cars. So they're bringing them in droves. But there's not as many people that were fans of, say the Peugeot 106, which is now legal for import, or the Peugeot 206, which will be legal for import, or Renault Clio Williams, things like that, right? Which is a whole nother market. There's definitely people that are interested in that, but I think fanfare with things like Fast and Furious, Initial D, stuff like that, just made the Japanese thing way more prominent than the other cars, right? Brian asks, does the 25-year bypass those weird laws not allowing right-hand drive vehicles in some states? I'm pretty sure it does because they're classified as classic cars at that point. I haven't heard of anyone that's had an issue registering a 25-year plus car in any of the states. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty confident that 25-year rule does bypass those laws because they are registered as classic vehicles. So moving on, this one I'm actually really excited for. Not sure if a lot of people have heard about this car, but what you're looking at is the Renault Spider. Now, this is the French Lotus Elise. Foreshadowing. The French came up with an idea to make a lightweight sports car. Now, they came up with this idea in the early 90s, okay? Renault released what was their rendition, effectively, of the Lotus Elise, and this is the Spider. The Spider weighs 2,050 pounds, which is to say it weighs 400 pounds less than my 1997 Civic Coupe. It is an incredibly lightweight machine, and that is all thanks to an aluminum chassis and plastic, yes, plastic body panels. The power plant in this thing was awesome. They ripped the engine right from the Clio Williams, which is a fire-breathing engine. 2.0 liter, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine that makes 150 horsepower and 136 pound-feet of torque. This car is a must-buy to anyone who can afford it. Excuse me. It has windshield as optional. It looks awesome. If I were to tell you this car was 5 years old, 6 years old, 3 years old, 8 years old, whatever, you would believe me. This car has aged tremendously well. Yes, it looks a little quirky, a little funky, but the Renault Spider is a good-looking car. And 150 horsepower with 2,000 pounds of weight, it's probably a really good drive. So I hope to see a bunch of these coming into the U.S. Only time will tell, but had to tell you guys it existed, which paves the way for the Lotus Elise S1. Yes, we can finally import the first generation of the Lotus Elise. For those of you that don't know, this is a 118 horsepower car. It uses the K-Series engine, and no, not the Honda K-Series engine, but the Rover K-Series engine, the same engine that is in fact in the MG TF, which is a mid-engine car from MG. That 1.8 liter engine makes 118 horsepower, but the kicker with the Lotus Elise is its chassis and body. This thing uses epoxy bonded extruded aluminum, and this was the first car to do that. And because of its extensive use of aluminum, it makes that Renault Spider that I just talked about look like a fat ass. That Renault Spider weighed 2,050 pounds. This Lotus Elise weighs just 1,598. Yes, that's right. This thing weighs 400 pounds less than 2,000. Okay, and a whopping 800 pounds less than a 90s Civic Coupe with the same horsepower. And because this thing weighed so little, even though it only had 118 horsepower, it still did 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. Reviews call this car agile, dynamic, truly an amazing performer. If you can get your hands on this thing, do it. If I was in a better financial position where I had money to throw around like that for a car, for an extra car, I would 100% look at getting one of these in the U.S. Now, if you check the forums or look at eBay and things like that, the Lotus Elise goes for roughly, 15 to 25K, depending on mileage and color and things like that. So you'd probably be looking at 18 to 30K for one of these imported, all said and done. For a vehicle, you're not going to find likely a better, more engaging driving experience. I'm looking at you Miata people. This is your king, right? Galen says, just 3 more years until we can bring over the Smart 4.2 Crossblade. Yeah, Galen, I'm going to be honest. I think you might be one of 3 people interested in the 4.2 Crossblade, which means that there's going to be a bidding war because they didn't make a lot of those. I'm looking forward to seeing your Crossblade coming to the U.S. Brian says, wasn't that the car that Elon made the first Tesla from? Yes, he did in fact use a Lotus Elise, but it was not this one. It was actually the second generation of the Lotus Elise, and we got that car as well. You can buy Lotus Elises here in the U.S., you just couldn't buy this one. So he did use the Elise as the basis for his car, but not this generation. It was the next generation of vehicle. Sorry about that. Moving on. Got a couple more cars to get through. 1996 must have been a hell of a year, by the way, for those of you that didn't live in the U.S. But anyway, the JZX 100 Toyota Chaser is finally available for import. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. This is one of the better looking sedans ever. While I can't say like the Renault Spider that this looks like a 2015 car, it just looks fantastic. Like, it's very, very classic design. It's available in a ton of different configurations. You can get this thing in everything from a diesel all-wheel drive stick shift to a single turbo 1J to a 2J. Like, you can get so many different things. But in 1996, you can get it with the 1J and the single turbo. Send it. Super pumped. That's the only one that matters for 1996 as far as I'm concerned. And I'm excited to see more of these popping up in the U.S. Hopefully that doesn't mean prices are crazy. If you're paying anything over $30,000 for a 90s Toyota that isn't a Supra, you're out of your mind. But anyway, here we are. Alex says, looks like a 90s car for sure, and you would be 100% right. It does not look as good as this, the Renault Spider, which again looks like it could have existed 2 months ago. It looks incredible. Anyway, moving on. One of the last cars which everyone forgets about, but god damn it, I'm going to bring this thing back. The 8th generation Gallant had a VR4, and holy shit, was it awesome. While we here in the US were stuck with a naturally aspirated front-wheel drive, Japan got a VR4 variant. 2.5 liter twin-turbo V6 with 276 horsepower, all-wheel drive, and an available 5-speed manual, which means not only can you have room for yourself, your friends, your kids, your family, whoever, but you're going to be hauling ass on the way there, right? This thing is all-wheel drive. This thing's a V6, twin turbo, understated looks. I love it. This is my favorite Gallant VR4 out of the couple that existed. I think this one does not get enough praise in the community of, like a lot of people just forget that this car existed, but I'm here to remind you that not only does it exist, but you can finally import it to the United States, and I'm looking forward to see which lunatic is the first one to do it. Alex says, I'd expect to see it in a 90s buddy cop movie. You're totally right. Brad, you take that back. No, I will not. While I do appreciate the first generation of the Gallant VR4, which shared a ton with the Lancer Evo 1, was effectively a Lancer Evo 1. Look at this thing. Okay? 2.5 liter, twin turbo, V6, all-wheel drive, stick shift. Lovely. Lovely machine. So I will not take that back, Brad Anderson. I will not take that back. And that's all we got for you guys today for 1996 vehicles. I think some honorable mentions that I didn't talk about here. The Peugeot 106 is a hatchback, had fantastic rally history. There's a lot of people, both in Greece and otherwise, that use that car for hill climbs. You can probably get into one really cheap. A 106 Rally is really, really, really cheap, for sure. Brian says, you just want it because it looks like it has rims that are RPF 1s. And you know what? You might be right, Brian, but at the end of the day, who doesn't want a twin-turbo V6 all-wheel drive sedan? Anybody? Anybody in chat? Anybody in chat not want one of those? Because if you do, you're insane. You're insane. Ugh. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I do truly appreciate it. For whatever reason, I did block out my camera here because I'm an idiot as we're ending the stream. But no, thank you guys for tuning into the stream. Again, you can find us on Facebook at MoneyShift Podcast. You can find us on YouTube at MoneyShift. And we're also on Twitch at MoneyShift_. We're here every week, every Tuesday from around the 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time range. If you guys ever have any topics, questions, whatever, feel free to ping me on one of those channels. We always put up the day of a little bit of a questionnaire if anybody has any questions that they would like answered on the podcast, or just topics. Like if you want to talk about cars like this, like, hey, Thanasi, come up with a list of more 1996 vehicles that maybe I didn't know of that we can import. You got it. I'm on it. Maybe that's cool concept cars, whatever it is. I want to talk about it with you guys. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to ping me, let me know. But the podcast comes out. It's on every streaming platform you can think of. But thank you guys for joining us. Drive safe, be safe.